Welcome back to LizCapism. I have a theory that in order to take up a hobby successfully, you must enjoy being terrible at it. Whatever you are trying to do, whatever skill you wish to master, or at least to cultivate, you must endure, first, many brutal hours of mediocrity. When you must learn something for school, work, or survival, the impetus is very different. It doesn't have to be fun, it just has to be learned. Hobbies are supposed to be fun by their very definition. So, how can being bad at something yield enjoyment and eventually improvement? That I cannot answer. I know only that I have taken up and set aside more hobbies, pastimes, and entertainments in dull boredom or frustration than I can count. Even sewing has held a place on that shelf of abandoned occupations. However, among all the other hobbies, it stood out as being the one I regretted, that I would rather to take up again. But every time I tried, I would look for beginner tasks, entry-level projects, or easy lessons. Time and time again, I ran straight into a solid wall of mommy bloggers making terry cloth capes, diaper bags, quilts, and burping cloths. If that's your jam, go for it. I am not a mom, and I only know so many babies, so that wasn't for me. I would be discouraged and cease my search. It was finally on YouTube, which, through the magical suggested video algorithm, combined with a slow workday, led me down the rabbit hole which ended at what was then a fledgling community of historical and vintage sewists and costumers, now the thriving and growing Costube. How and why this was the place for me is the story for another video. But I was flooded suddenly with possibilities, ideas, and projects which interested me, which inspired me. I dove in, head first, and began. There's no accounting for how these things happen, but I was suddenly very bad at sewing in totally new ways. I could feel and tell that my hands could not keep up with my imagination. I was looking up every other word on patterns and drafting guides. Along with my sewing machine, I constantly had 3 or 4 web pages up, including at least one YouTube tutorial. Because I received it as a gift, I set my sights on making an ensemble from the American Duchess 18th century dressmaking book. This was ambitious, obviously, but I was full of enthusiasm and reckless optimism. So I began, and the first evidence of that is my 18th century stays, the first project video I posted on the channel, and to this day one of my more popular videos. But then a curious thing happened, not just to me, but to the world. I was thrust into the costuming world at almost the same time as the rest of the world was cut off from me. I was suddenly without my in-person assistants, which meant that I could not continue my 18th century gown project. I knew very well that I was not skilled enough or knowledgeable enough yet to tackle parts of the project myself. I slapped together what I needed to take some nice photos for the Foundation's Revealed competition, and then put that project away. I did other things, which I have shared with you on this channel. The long period of isolation allowed me to dedicate time and energy to Costube, and to bring myself into a community. I made friends, and found encouragement and inspiration to try new things, learn more, and to keep sewing. Along with community and camaraderie, we all found in each other a deep well of knowledge, which each of us had been industriously filling separately for a long time. Isaac Newton is famous for saying, "If I have seen further, it is because I stood on the shoulders of giants." The history nerd in me loves that this is actually a metaphor that originates in 12th century texts of grammarians, and thereby proving that Newton even relied on the cliches of his forebears to reach new oratorical heights. The sentiment, regardless of attribution, is absolutely true. Because of this vast, largely accessible font of information at my fingertips, I have been able to learn in 1 year what many scholars and craftspeople of different decades and centuries would have devoted their careers to learning. This is not because I am better or smarter, it is because I came later and I have giant footsteps to tread in. Somehow, without realizing it, I spent the last 6 months in isolation building my skills in such a way that about 3 weeks ago, I found myself drafting, measuring, and assembling more parts of my 18th century gown. I hadn't even realized what I had been building to, but suddenly there it was. I had, through sew-alongs, chats with costuming friends, CocoVid tutorials, and dedicated effort, gained the skills and know-how that I needed, or at least enough of them, to make an honest effort. So far, I have a shift, under petticoat, stays, pocket, cap, and apron. The petticoat also has a wearable mock-up twin, which I will talk about in more detail in the next video. This is an odd video, as I'm not talking much about the actual construction process of making these items, so let me quickly summarize why. This is a kind of made in isolation video, as the pocket, shift, under petticoat, and apron were all 99% constructed off camera, without any intention of exploring them deeply in a video. If you would like info on how to make them, I recommend watching the sew-alongs from Burnley and Trowbridge. These dear people are entirely responsible for both my hand sewing skills and my calluses. At the beginning of my planning this project back in January, I had absolutely no thought of making this dress by hand. That was laughable, ridiculous, utterly absurd. As it turns out, the only item currently on my person that was machine sewn is the set of stays. Everything else was hand seamed, sewn, and felled. I have no words for how gratifying that is. The reason for the talkie video, without much play-by-play of the sewing, is because that will come in the next video, when the entire outfit is complete. I wanted first to explain why this is not a solitary hobby, and why the love of being bad at something is so necessary to a hobby. I was so bad at hand sewing at the beginning of this year that I couldn't even imagine a future where I could make a gown that way. In the past 6 months, I have done it almost entirely by accident, simply by wanting to learn, to improve, and to share. I do not have words for the gratitude and pride I feel for all of you and my costuming friends for helping me and encouraging me to learn. I hope you are excited to see my finished ensemble, which I will feature with the completed bodice in the next video on this channel. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and share this video with someone you think needs a little encouragement to learn something new. Head over to my Ko-fi page to support me by keeping me in Diet Coke and Band-Aids for these poor hand-sewing fingers of mine. See you soon!